Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Today we are once again playing the new hotness in Legacy, which is Stalactite Stalker, a 1-mana 1/1 menace that at the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Descended means if a permanent card was put into your graveyard from anywhere. You can also sack it to -X/-X something where X is its power, but that rarely comes up. This is basically just a evasive beat stick. So we have a lot of things to make this grow. We've got ourselves a Mishra's Baubles. We have all of our fetch lands, Polluted Deltas, Scalding Tarns, Bloodstained Mires. We've also got Wastelands as well. So the idea is that we can play this on turn 1 and it will be a 2/2. Now the reason this is good, obviously, you know, a growing threat, a threat that's evasive, you know, all reasonable things. But what's really impressive about this is that it's a thing we can make on turn 1 that will be able to dodge Bowmasters. So if we're on the draw, we can play this on turn 1, grow it to a 2/2, then it won't get killed by Bowmasters. I recently played a Death Shadow deck with it, and I don't think that was the best home for it, because Death Shadow already has decks which kind of ignore Orcish Bowmasters because they're bigger anyway, whether you're reanimating your Street Wraith, or you're playing your Murktide, or you're putting your Death Shadow into play, you can kind of ignore Bowmasters a little bit there. So Stalactite Stalker wasn't the best fit in there in my opinion. It was still fine. It was still, you know, we still had a good time. I think we got 4-1 or something with it. You know, deck felt great, but I don't think it was great because of the Stalactite Stalker. This list, however, when we're running our own Bowmasters and our own Dragon's Race Channeler, having a threat that actually dodges Bowmasters is more important here because we're already kind of a little bit vulnerable to it. So having a wider threat profile so we can actually put some stuff down against it makes more sense. So the shell we're playing in today is pretty much a stock Grixis list. I know a few people have been toying with this, and here's what we're playing today. So, you know, we've got our Dragon's Race Channeler, we've got our Orcish Bowmasters, we've got our Murktide Regents, the classic threats. We also have a Brazen Borrower to bounce some annoying permanents, attack in the air, that sort of jam. We've got a bunch of counter spells as you'd expect, Dazes, Force of Wills. We've got some lightning bolts. Because we're in Grixis, we can play Molten Collapse. So this is black, red sorcery. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent mana value 1 or less. If you've descended, you can do both of those things. So again, this kind of ties into being able to do baubles and fetch lands, that sort of jam. And then we've got a bunch of cantrips as you'd expect. So there's things to like about this list for sure. Like having an extra bauble means we're more likely to get Delirium on our Channeler, as well as being able to pump out our Stalkers, which kind of, these have got some interesting synergy, but more on that in another video. These two have some interesting synergy alongside each other, much more so than Delver, because Delver wants you to have just instants and sorceries. Dragon's Race Channeler wants you to have loads of different types. Stalactite Stalker only cares about permanents, so there's overlap between all of these, and it's a case of trying to get them to work right. But obviously Channeler, if you mill over any land or creature from the top of your deck, then that's going to pump the Stalker. It's only once per turn and it's only your turn, but you can still do that to grow it later on. So I like some of the synergy going on there, and I'm curious to see how it pans out. A few things to note with this list. A lot of our threats are weak to Leyline of the Void. So Stalactite Stalker, we can't descend if we don't have a graveyard, because Leyline of the Void is a replacement effect, so nothing will go into the graveyard, so this will never trigger. Means that our Channelers are 1/1, we can't cast Murktide, so kind of down to Bowmasters and Borrower. So Leyline of the Void isn't a card you're seeing very much at the moment. The mono black Helm decks have kind of fallen right off. I don't think they're that good, and they're certainly getting punished in the meta right now. So we're kind of hoping to dodge that. We can bounce it, which is something. Dazzling Voidwalker is a lot more common, but obviously Lightning Bolt and Molten Collapse as well as counter spells can answer that, so that's not such a big deal. Mana base wise, what have we got here? We got 3 Volcanics, 3 Underground Seas, and the 1 Badlands. This doesn't help us cast Daze, but it does cast either of our turn 1 threats, so that's pretty nice. We've only got room for 3 Wastelands here. If you want the 4th Wasteland, you're probably looking at cutting something like a Molten Collapse. You have to cut one of your spells to fit in the Wasteland here because it goes in the spell slot. Sideboard wise, we've got tools that you would expect to see really. We've got Pyroblasts and Hydroblast. Hydroblast, very good at the moment, things like Turbo Muxus and lots of mono red prison decks running around. We've got some more counter magic in the form of Force of Negation. Got a little bit of Graveyard Hate, a couple of Surgicals. We've got a couple of Price of Progress. Because we're only running 3 Wastelands, we can run Price of Progress as our sort of way of going over the top. And because we are trying to be more aggressive with these 8 1-drops, this can be final points of damage a lot more often than builds that aren't running as many 1-drops as we are. I've got Narset to stop some of these Bean decks from drawing too many cards. And then we've got some Artifact Hate you'd expect. And then just a little bit more removal in the form of Molten Collapse. And yeah, that's the list. We've played Delver variants before on the channel quite a lot. It's a deck that I enjoy playing. There's lots of decisions to make, and I used to play Rug Delver many, many years ago, so it's very much in my wheelhouse of stuff I like to play. And this feels relatively tempo-y where we've got the 8/1 drops, so I'm excited to give it a whirl and see if this is the better home for Stalactite Stalker, where I think this probably is the case. Do we have enough permanents to grow it? Probably. Is it going to grow that large? Probably not. It's probably going to be a 2/2, 3/3 sometimes. But there is the possibility in longer games through Chandler to grow it, but normally if we've got Chandler growing stuff, we're going to be winning with the Chandler anyway. So, curious to see quite how good it is. I've not played this particular shell with it in yet, so let's get into it. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get Stalactite stalking. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past, so why not give them a try? Our opening hand for round 1 does not have a mana source in, so this is an easy mulligan for us. Alright, we have a 2/2 on turn 1, we've got some Force of Will backup stuff going on. Then we keep this, and we probably get rid of the Borrower. Hope that we're not going to have to try and fish that out at some point. Verdant Catacombs. What flavour of Verdant Catacombs deck are we? We're looking at Reanimator here, maybe? No, we're not. Okay. Just a Noble Hierarch, that's fine. So we could bolt the bird, or we could just get our threat down and start working. So we want to get a black source. We also kind of want a red source. But we also want to cast our Brainstorm. So already we're tripping over our mana base a little bit. I think given where we are here in this matchup, I think we get the Underground Sea, and then next turn we use this to Brainstorm for a red source to cast a Lightning Bolt. That makes sense to me. And if we want to try and maximize our Stalker, we don't actually want to play this Bauble yet. We want to play it next turn so that we can be guaranteed to grow our Stalker next turn. Because this also being a removal spell can be an important thing that happens in this sort of matchup. I imagine we're looking at some kind of Cradle Control, Fiend Artisan Elves, whatever you want to call it. Or it could be Maverick. Our opponent is called that Maverick Joe. So, a Pithing Needle. This is probably going to name Wasteland. I can live with that, I think. We have Molten Collapse in our deck somewhere. So we might be able to blow this up and a creature at some point. But right at this precise moment in time, we are ahead on board. Street Wraith. Alright, excellent. It's named something we don't even have at all. Another Hierarch. Sure, that's fine. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested in getting this other Stalker down, but I think we do need to find another land drop here. Okay. So we've certainly got some options here. We want the Bowmaster, not this turn, but next turn. We don't have... I don't think this Daze is where we want to be. And we're fetching away whatever we don't keep here. So, do we want to fetch away this Bowmasters in a matchup where they've got lots of good stuff for it? Do we want to fetch away this Lightning Bolt, perhaps? Am I tunneling too much on Stalactite Stalker? Do we just get rid of the Bauble? That's probably the correct play here. We'll do that. We'll attack for 2 here. This has Menace. So... nice bit of damage. So we want a black-red source here. So we're going to go and get that Badlands. And we're going to deploy this second Stalker. So we're going to have a 3/3 and a 2/2. We're holding up Force of Will. And we've got Lightning Bolt next turn. We've also got Orcish Bowmasters. We can pick out one of these little guys. I don't mind the spot we're in. Okay, a Saga. A Wasteland would be nice to deal with this before it starts to do some more stuff. I'm curious what our opponent's playing here. So we've got 3 colours, possibly 4 if they're using the blue off this. Unlikely though. And then there's a Saga in it. This could just be like a one-of Urza Saga as a Elvish Reclaimer target. But we don't know. X is 3. No. Is what I'm going to say to that. Dragon's Rage Channeler. We can't play this and Lightning Bolt. So step 1 I think here is attack. We can choke our opponent off of a little bit of mana with an Orcish Bowmasters. I think that's worth doing here. We're a little bit exposed to something like a Natural Order because we burn it on the Greenstones, but if they've got something like a Knight of the Reliquary, that can get out of control. But if they just go and get Endurance, that's also not amazing for us. And Orcish Bowmasters of their own. So what are we going to lose here? They're correctly doing it in their turn so that we don't get the trigger on our Stalactite Stalker because this is only your end step. Alright, let's play this one out. This will grow our guys in a minute. Let's play this out first because we're going to be wanting to get our Delirium trigger in a second. Right, we will attack with everything. We can line about something and mess with them. What is this? An endurance? They're just making a construct. Sure. Let's see how they want to block here. We have to double block here. They can triple block to make sure this dies. Let's crack this. Go and get our Volcanic Island. Lightning bolt this away. Get our Delirium trigger. A Brazen Borrower. I'm going to put this on top of our library in case there's anything sketchy we need to get rid of. It's also an evasive threat if we need to get final points of damage in. We're already getting the trigger on these Stalkers, so these are going to be huge now. There was me saying that I'd be surprised if we get them up to above 3, and now we've got 7 power of Stalkers in place. So already looking better than when I played them in the Shadow deck. Curious what this Saga gets them. Maybe a Expedition map. So it looks like our opponent is somewhere in like Maverick or Abzan depths. There is a Shadow Spear. They don't have the mana to equip it unless they have a land drop. Okay, so they're going to equip it now and have a 4/4 construct token. Alright, they decided against that one. Oh, they're just attacking in for 3 here. That's quite a bold call in my opinion. So now we're just going to draw this Borrower. They can't block either of these. So I'll take 7 here. And we should hopefully be able to close this out either by using the Borrower as a threat for the additional 3 damage or to bounce it. So I'm happy to take 3 damage here off of their Bowmaster. Staff of the Storyteller. That's an interesting one. An interesting proposition. Okay, so they might be relying on this to block a Menace guy. We can also sacrifice one of these if we feel like getting rid of one of their like tokens here. Right, so this is probably coming in for 3 this turn. That's fine. Drawing a card with Staff the Storyteller. Okay. What is this? They're equipping the Shadow Spear to the Construct token. That's fine by me. So we'll just Petty Theft away the token. And that should be game. That's 7 Menace that they can't block. Alright, our opponent agrees. Let's go to sideboarding. So, interesting. How much into the Saga package are they? So Molten Collapse is probably going to be pretty reasonable here. Just more removal for guys. I think the Price of Progress are kind of interesting if we just need to get over the finish line. I don't think we want any of these things. So we're looking at maybe these 4 cards. What do we have here that we don't like? So this is where it gets a little trickier. I think the Dazes aren't very good on the draw. I think these go out in exchange for these. But is our blue count too low then? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That is a terrible amount of blue cards. That's just not a playable amount of blue cards left in our deck at that point. This is kind of the awkward notion of this deck. I think we are already on minimum blue cards in our main deck. So if we cut blue cards and they're not Force of Will, then our Force of Will kind of become bad. So there's 2 schools of thought here. We can either bring in less of these cards, or we can... Yeah, so we bring in less of these cards and have some of these blue ones back. Or we can just get rid of the Force of Wills and keep some number of days and bring in something like a Meltdown. Problem is, a lot of these other cards aren't really helping us out very much. Like, they might have some amount of graveyard stuff, so maybe a Surgical Extraction is acceptable. This is tough. Like, other things we could get rid of, like getting rid of the Mishra's Bauble is reasonable. So you can trim one of these to leave in a Daze. That's 17 blue cards. That is not enough. I don't think we're getting rid of Force of Wills, are we? Like, we can kind of marshal our resources in a way to make them better. Maybe we'll just have a Narset, a distraction Narset to draw some cards. That's probably better than a Daze here. Actually, what can this even find us? Yeah, not a big fan of having these Daze. I do think we want the Force of Wills in case there's like natural orders and big scary stuff. Is Force of Negation better than Daze? Maybe. I think we do want the Meltdown, actually. Seen Staff of the Storyteller. Alright, let's try this. I don't think we have enough blue cards, but I don't think we have enough time to ponder on it anymore. Yeah. I like to play Dragon's Rage Channelers and Lightning Bolts. Feels like a good way of approaching Magic the Gathering. Alright, they didn't play a 1-drop, which is excellent for us. This could mean that our creature is about to get Source to Plowshare, though. So you have to be interested in... Yeah, well, you have to be interesting. You have to take an interest in how you're playing your fetch lands out a lot more as well, because we need to keep fetch lands back in case we draw Stalkers, because you want to at least grow them a little bit. Because we know they've got Bowmasters, so we want to try and grow them outside of a Bowmaster's range when the time comes. Let's see how our opponent approaches this one. Alright, that's a non-basic. They should just get more non-basics here, I think, for the most part. Like, you just play into it, because now if we have a Wasteland, we might be able to Wasteland them off of a colour. A Witherbloom Command. Right, so they're going to get a land back. Probably this Urza Saga. Paradox Zone. Alright, we are in an interesting... Maybe we're more towards, like, even Nick Fit, perhaps. Hard to say. Another Price of Progress. Very interesting. Sure, we'll pass. So we have a clean answer to that Urza Saga they've just picked up. We kind of got to let it run its course a little bit, which isn't ideal, but I can live with that. A Shadow Spear, sure. A Brainstorm. Our opponent clearly has open Orcish Bowmasters mana here, but we can fetch and Lightning Bolt it, so I'm okay with this. Alright, they didn't have it. Interesting. I think we're looking for Murktide Regent just yet, although this is the blue card for our Force of Will. So kind of in that little sticky problem again. Do you want one of these Price of Progress? Maybe we're not in the Price of Progress mode right now. Let's crack this. We want a black source. So it's probably Underground Sea here. It's Badlands. We want to be able to... we're always going to be able to fetch out of the colour. So I think we're just going to go for... Play the Stalker. Play our land out. I don't think we're pondering here. I think we're going to hold up our Lightning Bolts. Cycling a Timeless Dragon. That's an annoying one. Right, maybe we do need more graveyard interaction than first anticipated. Although Murktide can get bigger than a Timeless. So I imagine what they're doing for the next couple of turns is just churning out some Saga constructs. And that's fine, I can live with that. Knight of the Reliquary. How many lands do they have in their graveyard? 1. So crop rotation is awkward here. Okay. This is good. Oh, I want them to tap. Okay. Green Sun Zenith. We need to crack this first, don't we? So this is just getting a Dryad Arbor. So we want a red source. We might as well get the bad... No, we don't want to get wasted off blue as a thing here, right? So we're going to get a Volk here. And we will Lightning Bolt this while we can. And we'll let them get their Dryad Arbor. 3 cards left in our opponent's hand. There is a Badlands. How big is... 1, 2... So we can ponder for free, basically, if we're trying to cast that. But we do need to find another blue card if we're doing this. Scalding Tarn is a blue card, is a fetch land. So we can cast Murktide right now. And grow our Channeler. Sorry, not our Channeler, our Stalactite. But that leaves us shields down for something like a Natural Order. If we're worried about that. How big will our Murktide be? 6? This is interesting. I think we bury the Force of Will and then take the Scalding Tarn, and we can reappraise the situation momentarily, if necessary. I don't think I want to get Natural Ordered. Something like a Traxxas will beat us here. I don't know if that's in their deck. I don't have a full read on what exactly is in their list. But I would also use this on a Green Sun Zenith for 3. If this gets a Pithing Needle, we don't mind. Because we're going to Meltdown next turn anyway. Soul Guide Lantern, sure. Getting rid of our Lightning Bolt. They probably should get rid of the Ponder for Delirium purposes rather than Lightning Bolt. But they might be worried about some kind of Mystic Sanctuary down the line. That might be a card that scares them more. Not attacking with the Dryad Arbor is very curious. Okay, so now we can Meltdown. Red. So they're going to draw a card off the Soul Guide Lantern, but we are going to clean up the Construct and the Shadow Spear. And then we can deploy a Murktide. They might just get rid of our graveyard here instead. Which means we're probably pitching a Murktide to a Force of Will, and then next turn we can hardcast a Force of Will. Be curious to see how they approach this. They are drawing a card, sure. Let's go attacks. Crack this for a blue source. I think probably looking at another Volk rather than a C here, because we already have the Badlands in hand. We don't have black in our deck. Blue, blue, Meltdown, Ponder, Brainstorm, and some lands. So now we've got 6/6. I don't think we're going to deploy this Badlands yet. So now we've got 3/3, which is removal that we can actually leverage against some things. We can't kill a knight with it at this point. But we can Force of Will knight. We can't do anything about the Timeless Dragon apart from attack with our slightly bigger dragon. Because their dragon will be a 4/4. But they need white for that, right? And they've only got one white. Is that right? White, yes. Okay. Ramunap Excavator. I don't really want to play against recurring Urza Sagas. They got a Veil? Yeah, okay. That's pretty good. But I think we have to at least try and counter this because it's going to ruin our day if they just get to make Urza Sagas over and over again. Now maybe we can just beat through this. There's the Urza Saga. There is a Bauble. Interesting. I think we are attacking with the Murktide here. We'll play this. We'll play the Bauble out. This way, if we draw a Force of Will, we can hardcast it. And we'll have a look at the top card of our opponent's library. A Carpet of Flowers. That's a lot of mana. But they already have a reasonable amount of mana. Maybe we're supposed to attack with our Stalker so that we can force the trade into the Ramunap. Sure. You can Bowmasters us. It's not amazing, but it's acceptable. Price of Progress. Okay, so we have lethal if our Murktide connects now. If they play another land, we just have lethal just hanging around. Carpet Flowers, be my guest. Right, we're going to second main to get their carpet mana. 4 white mana. So this is for Timeless Dragon. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, so we have lethal now. I think we do it on our turn here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's 10 damage. That's a lot of damage though to us. But lethal damage is quite a nice thing. 2, 4, 6, 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yep. What have you got here, opponents? GG's. All right. We got GG's from our opponent there. The Price of Progress came in. We shuffled it back in earlier, and it came up at the right time, which is quite nice. What we're probably doing that turn, or we at least have an option to do, is kill the Timeless Dragon and attack. But things get a little bit sketchy at that point if we don't have the Price of Progress. But if we don't have the Price of Progress, we have something else. But if it was just like a land, then I guess it gets trickier. Lightning Bolt also means that this is lethal if we kill this and attack with the Murktide. But yeah, we gave him a Flower of Delvering, and we did manage to find the blue cards of Force of Will there. So that's something. Let's go to round 2. Welcome to round 2. I am not particularly in love with our opening hand. I want a turn 1 threat. I'll take a turn 1 Ponder though. So this hand is working towards a threat in the form of Murktide Regent. Is that acceptable to us? I think so. Although, do we just want Ponders? Just have maximum amount of looks at a threat and we'll find a Murktide later on. Interesting. We'll keep this. It's either a Ponder or a Murktide that goes back here, I believe. I think we're going to put the Murktide back for now. I'd rather have more looks at finding another coloured mana source in case we start getting wastelanded by our opponent. Our opponent's mulligan to 5 so far. A Bayou. No play. Interesting. Are we wastelanding this? I don't have a play on turn 1. That makes me want to wasteland this. Sure, we'll just do that. Entomb. Computer says no. This Daze isn't working out for us, but I think we might need it next turn. So let's just get rid of this Entomb. So I believe our opponent is playing the black-green reanimated deck, which I believe my video for this went up last week, maybe? Looks kind of interesting. So the sideboard on it is a Witherbloom Apprentice combo. Alright, there's a Lotus Petal. Makes our Daze look a little bit sad. But we've got 2 cards in hand. Polluted Delta. Thank you, Polluted Delta. So this needs to get a Volcanic so we can cast our Dragon's Rage Channeler and have a Daze up. Just classic tempo things. Hello, Dragon's Rage Channeler. Let's hope our Daze does something. Like, they probably need to cast multiple spells in a turn, so we can probably at least nab the last one. But now the game's sort of slowed down a bit, they're probably going to be looking to disrupt our hand before going off. But their hand just might not work out that way, and they might have to try and do something. Just cracking the fetch around Stifle, I believe that is. Not quite in the market for this yet. Let's cast a Ponder first. Very unlikely to grow our guy. If we... So this is instant sorcery creature land. So he puts in the graveyard. This will attack for 3. Dragon's Rage Channeler, Lightning Bolt, Daze. Okay. I'm okay having double Dazes here. Next turn we play a Channeler, and then we're just cracking away. There might be a possibility of playing a Murktide without shrinking our Channelers, depending on how much we have to use our Dazes. But we shall see. And Entomb. So we can't Daze this because they have 2 mana to pay. So we have to let this one go. Which is awkward. If they play this slowly, then we're in trouble. Yep, looks like they're playing it a bit slower. Alright, let's cast the Channeler. So this will put them to 13. And then we've got a Lightning Bolt coming up, so we have a 2-turn clock. A Grief. Yeah, this is good. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. So they're going to be able to take out one of our Dazes, and then they can follow this up with a Reanimate spell that we can't really interact with. And Exhume. The top card of our library is a Lightning Bolt. Is a Lightning Bolt where we want to be right now? How big is this Archon of Cruelty? 6, right? This is a 6 power guy. So Murktide is going to be 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't have a land right now, so we do have to pay for this. So that our Murktide can be a 7. I don't think we need the Lightning Bolt anymore. Molten Collapse would be nice. They are going to crack their lowest spell for this. As they should. So now our Murktide can be big enough. We do get a creature here, but it will immediately die. It just means we don't lose any of our on-board guys. Would I rather have the Menace guy or the Delirium guy here? That's an interesting question here. I think we'll get rid of one of our Delirium guys. We can at least poke through. Oh no, wait. We can't play this Murktide actually because we're going to lose a card in hand. Yikes. Okay. No, I think we just cold to this Archon actually. Yikes. Okay. We need to draw a Murktide, is what's happening here. A Mishra's Bauble. What does that do for us? Right, let's surveil and see what we're up to. An Orcish Bowmasters. That gives us stuff to sacrifice to Archon of Cruelty. That's not really going to get us there, is it? Okay, so we put this into our graveyard. So we play this out. Both of these have to attack, which is awkward. Right, they don't both have to attack, but this one's not blocking. So we lose our Channeler here, then we lose our Stalker. We don't Bauble until their turn because we want to draw the card in our turn, so we at least have a chance of casting it instead of having it discarded. But this guy's going to die in a second anyway. So we're trying to draw Molten Collapse to just get rid of this. But we only have 1 turn to do that. Let's have a look at top card of their library. Not that it makes much of a difference here. Lotus Petal, okay. This means we're probably going to draw Daze this turn. That's usually how the game works. Brazen Borrower can also buy us some time. Right, that's not the one we needed. That's also not the one we needed, and we're dead. I think the play we made trying to do the Dazes and stuff, that doesn't really matter there. I think what we're supposed to do is not play out the Stalactite Stalker so we have a guy to sack. So we have a card in our hand to throw away. But that was the turn before. Maybe we're supposed to hold it, but we need the pressure. I don't know. Maybe we couldn't quite thread the needle unless we had perfect information. Right, surgical extractions, yes please. And then the Force of Negation seem pretty good here. I don't mind Narset. It finds more stuff. It stops some of their drawy things. This is acceptable as an idea, but I'm not sure if we're going to go for it. The Molten Collapses are pretty good. They're probably going to be sideboarding into the Witherbloom package, I would imagine. So, what do we not want here? We're going to want the Lightning Bolts because we believe they're on the Witherbloom. Maybe we don't want the Molten Collapse because it's Sorcerer's B. Maybe we don't want this Narset. So we're looking to fit in 3 cuts to facilitate this. Orcish Bowmasters doesn't feel very good in this matchup, to be honest. It is a threat that does stuff, but it doesn't really do that much stuff. Sure, we'll try it like this. Like, this doesn't lose quickly, so that's something. We wanted to string some more things together, but we've got all the interaction in the world here. Surgical, Daze, and Force of Will. Or double Force of Will, Surgical. Like, I do not believe we are dying on the first turn, so that's good. Our opponent kept 7 though, so they are odds on to do alright here. Unmasked targeting us. Is this worth dazing just so they don't get the information? What are they going to take here? Is this worth a daze? I think it is. Now they play their land out. What have you got here, opponent? A Dark Ritual. Sure. An Entomb. Okay, we'll allow this one so we can just get the Surgical to thin their deck of threats. There's an Atraxa. Can they go for it? They are. Let's get rid of this Atraxa. Right, so they got Entomb and Dark Ritual in hand. Let's have a look at their deck. So Witherbloom Apprentice, Chain of Smog. Yep, so we correctly identify that they'd be pivoting off. And they've now got what, Atraxa is basically their only big threat in there. And the Grizzlebrand that they exiled. And 1 Archon of Cruelty. They kind of go 1 of each. So this won't have any targets. That gets us closer towards playing our Murktide Regent. I will play out a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Where were you on turn 1? Could have had some nice surveils going. Alright. An Entomb. Are we supposed to counter this Entomb? I think we probably are. And then we just try and slam a Murktide in a few turns. Stalactite Stalker, that can get into the graveyard. This not being a blue mana is annoying. Let's do some surveilling again. Force of Negation. I will put that on top of my library, please. Let's see what our opponent has over there. Lotus Petal. Sure, we're unlikely to have to worry about that just yet. So this Force at least lets us stop the next thing. Right, there's a Lotus Petal we knew about. That blue source is good here. Blue card is good here. Brainstorm rarely feels like a bad thing to be doing, so here we are. Bloodstained Mire. This is a blue source, but we kind of need the Murktide Regent for our blue card. This is a land for this. Wasteland, no thank you. And it doesn't matter which fetch land we keep because they all fetch all of our fetches, all of our jewels. So now we have... We're going to shuffle away before we draw another card. We've got Force of Negation. That can be a hard cast Force of Negation soon. I think we're in an okay spot. Things can certainly go wrong for us. Our Murktide will take us off of Delirium. A Witherbloom Apprentice. Can't counterspell that one. So in our upkeep, we'll fetch away. Blue source here. I think we're probably looking at... Is it a Volcanic or an Underground Sea? Maybe just Underground Sea, so just have our colours split up. Alright. Sure, we just go to attacks here. We'll save this for the purposes of brainstorming, so we can put more cards back potentially. So we've got hard cast Force of Negation. Maybe we're supposed to play that land out in case we draw another land, and that way we have Murktide and Force of Negation held up. Alright, so we take 2 from the Witherbloom Apprentice. Another Force of Negation. Interesting. So we play this one out. So we have 1, 2 lands in there, and we have 1 here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you can make a Murktide without losing Delirium, I think, here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we still have instant, creature, artifact, land. And that, do we kill our opponent next turn that way? We do. So that's probably what we should be doing here. So blue, blue. We get rid of Bloodstained Mire, Force of Will, Brainstorm, Surgical Extraction. And then we can crack this Polluted Delta to get Delirium. Entomb for the old Witherbloom Apprentice. They only have a Dark Ritual in hand. I don't believe this is our fight, even if we wanted it to be. Just Coffin Purge. No. Right, so we have Force of Negation. We know they only have Dark Ritual, so they're not going to be able to like duress us and do a thing. We can fire off this Dark Ritual. Sure. Just puts them to 10. This might be a bait spell. Let's see what they have. A Grief. Okay, we can't do anything about that. But we have 9 power in the air, which is not 10. Quite an important distinction. We don't know what the top card of our library is, so we won't crack this just yet. Okay, a Ponder. Cast a Ponder here. Another Ponder. No, that's not what we're looking for. Lightning Bolt or another Murktide are both fine here. Another Murktide is lethal, so we will put them back like this. Wait, is it lethal? Hold on. So we can grow by 3, and that makes it 9. We can grow it by 1. We only need to grow it by 1. So we have 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana, 6 mana. We don't have enough to actually win that turn, but our opponents had enough, which is fair enough. I don't think we sideboard any differently. We just go back in. Our opponent's probably going to be on the reanimate plan for game 3. That's kind of how I tended to play it when I tried this deck out. I think you want to go for the... oh god. This isn't the one, is it? We would like a mana source. If this Murktide was, let's say, a fetch land, that would be pretty good. Alright, we'll keep this. Double forcible blue card. Goodbye, Orcish Bowmasters. Let's see if this does anything. Thoughtseize is targeting us. Sure, you can take one of our Force of Wills, or you can take the Stalker and slow down our tempo. I think they're probably going to be taking Force of Wills here. No, but took the tempo. Interesting. Modo bug, I guess. So this is probably getting us an Underground Sea. Modo bug indeed. Sure. We're growing our guy. So we've got a threat. We've got 2 pieces of disruption for our opponent's spells. A reanimate targeting our Stalker. Honestly, I don't think that's a problem. I think they can have that. That's not where our fight is. Cycling a Troll of Khazad-dûm. Sure. Feels like that reanimate is just a tester to see if they can get anything out of our hand. Right, so they got themselves a Bayou. Their Stalker's going to grow, but we have the advantage in the race already. And these are both menace, so it's just going to be ships in the night sort of thing. We found another piece of permission. But our guy isn't going to grow anymore. Not this turn, at least. They can grow their guy. Start changing things. We've got 7 turns. If it's 3, we've got 17. Divided by 3 is 6. So they can get there on that one. We're going to see for black here. Collective Brutality. We cannot allow this one. Is this one where we daze it? I think it probably is. So they discarded a permanent card, so their guy will actually grow this turn because they discarded the swamp. There it goes. Alright, I would like to cast this Ponder. We could find something to grow this soon. Another Force of Will is not bad. So they take us to 14, then 11, then 8, then 5, then 2, then they kill us. That's 6 turns of attacking. So our clocks are kind of similar. I think we need another land here, though, so we are going to go in the order and shuffle. Right, we found a land. That's useful. We can use that to grow our guy next turn. Maybe think about deploying a Murktide soon, but I'd rather have double blue card available because our opponent can just kill us out of nowhere. And just go like Dark Ritual, Witherbloom, Smog, and then we die. What have you got for us this time, opponent? A Reanimate Dead. Sorry, an Animate Dead, not a Reanimate Dead. So this is going to be a Force of Will pitching Force of Will for us. They bash us for 3. That life loss is actually not irrelevant. Yep, this is going to go up to 4 now. So we have a land here. I would have liked to have found a blue card here, but crack this to get a Volcanic. We're up to 3. So our opponent's got a 3-turn clock and they're going first. So we probably have to deploy this Murktide. But we need to have access to a blue card before we really do that. We don't want to go shields down on this Force of Will. But we might not have a choice. Like, we don't want to die to this Stalactite Stalker whilst we have a Murktide Regent in play that can one-shot our opponent. What fresh hell is this? We cannot allow this because we will just be dead on the next turn. So goodbye, animate dead. Yep, so now I have a 5-5. So we're going to need some help here, otherwise we're going to get beaten by our own Stalker. Alright, this is pretty much how we drew it up, I suppose. So we bash in for 3 here. Do we need to deploy the... I think it might be better to keep this as a surprise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blue, blue. Alright, so we have a lethal threat here. Our opponent could put us to 2 this turn. But they might have just worn our defences down. Alright, that's a guy. They got any follow-up? I don't believe there's any cards in their deck that allow them to put the combo into play right now. Because they would need a starting mana source, acceleration, and the Chain of Smog. That's 3 cards, and they only have 2. So they can attack us for 5 here. We can't do anything about that. Because it has Menace. But then we get to crack back for 10 damage. If they have Snuff Out, we do lose the game. Is there any way we can play around Snuff Out? I don't believe so. If we attack with both of the guys, we should have played our land first. But if they got Snuff Out, we're just dead here, I think. Actually, no, that's not true. If they snuff this out, this kills them for 3, right? That is the playing around it. Alright, they didn't have the Snuff Out, or they did have the Snuff Out and it didn't matter. But if they had Snuff Out, they probably don't attack with their Stalker. But maybe they have to, no, because they can try and just draw Chain. Alright, that was a pretty tough game, actually. But we managed to get there. I think my familiarity with this deck, because I played it the other day, certainly helped. And I knew to keep in my lightning bolts and things for game 2. Let's go to round 3. We are 2-0. Not really a fan of this hand. This hand is fine, but we kind of are looking for a threat more so. But we have a decent chunk of resources to try and find a threat. Right, I think I will keep this one. But I wouldn't blame anyone for mulliganing this either. So we might be doing a turn 1 Brainstorm here. Just so we can get a better look at potential threats. Although our threats have 1 mana, so we'll probably just do the Brainstorm on our second turn anyway. Which means we're probably playing out Bloodstained Mire. Opponent is a fan of the channel. So we're going to play the Bloodstained Mire so we can dodge a Wasteland. And the plan is to play the Underground Sea, Brainstorm, play a threat. Have a good time. Obviously, if we get a Dragon's Race channel and maybe we play the threat first off the Badlands and then hold up the fetch land. A Lotus Petal. Okay, nothing good's going to come from a Lotus Petal. This is going to be all up in our business in some way, shape, or form. We have an emergency Brainstorm if we need one, but we do have a Force of Will we're sat on anyway. City of Traitors. We're looking at Turbo Muxus, maybe. I do think Turbo Muxus is a tier 1 deck that you have to have a game plan against, otherwise you will lose to it. Chrome Mox. We're seeing some more mana here. We do have a counter spell for the first scary thing that comes down. Let's see what that scary thing is. I believe we're more likely to see some sort of initiative rather than Turbo Muxus, because you don't see the Lotus Petals that often. It's Chrome Mox and Spirit Guide, no Lotus Petals, generally speaking, for Turbo Muxus. But maybe someone's doing Turbo Muxus. A Solitude. Okay, so I think my read on it being initiative is fine. Is this Chalice of the Void for 0? That shuts down one of the spells we have, so that's fine. That's just the what's it called? The Mishra's Bauble. How are we going to navigate this one? I kind of want to cast a Brainstorm here and get a little bit more information first. Because if we find something like a Lightning Bolt, then we don't really want to counterspell this. So let's cast a Brainstorm in response. Okay, another Force of Will. So we're just going to put back some lands here. And I think we will Force of Will this. Pitching the Brainstorm. The Ponder can shuffle away cards if that's the thing we feel like we need to do. So we have an Underground Sea here. We can Ponder. Play Stalactite Stalker. and hold up Force of Will with the Murktide Regent, but we could hold up the Ponder onto the Force of Will. That way we at least have a Murktide as a plan here, and Murktide is a pretty good plan as it turns out. There's an interesting turn that could go in some varying different ways. Do I want this Ponder? I think we're going to go for the Ponder. We can always just find a blue card. I like the Lightning Bolts, but I don't think we want any of these necessarily. This is to shuffle that card we put on top, so we'll shuffle. Another Murktide. Alright, that's an acceptable draw. Means we still have the Murktide plan. We've got our little goblin that hopefully can get us there. We've got a Menace threat, which is very good against the initiative. I imagine our deck is just generally good against the initiative. Delver tends to be favoured in the matchup, and we've got an additional evasive threat. This is a Chalice where X is 1. That's fine in this current board state. So we're just going to dump out a big guy. There's a Bauble. So we play this into the Chalice. This will trigger our Stalactite Stalker. And then we will cast this guy. Blue, blue, get rid of the things to make it as big as possible. We have to get rid of everything, but just go tax. This will grow. We're holding up Force of Will, Murktide Regent. I feel pretty confident. 3 cards in our opponent's hand. I'm not even sure Fourth Eolingus is a thing they want to cast at this point. If they have it. They can make 3 to 4 guys, depending on the lands in their hand. If that's what they're up to. Caves of Chaos Adventurer. So if we Force of Will this, I think that's better than messing around with the initiative in the game. Let's just say no to that. And just get stalactiting. So this will not do anything right now. It can fuel future Murktides, but it can also be a blue card for a Force of Will. So I think I'm going to keep this in hand for now. Like, obviously can't Brainstorm or anything with Chalice in play, but maybe we could borrow it, Brazen Borrower it, and then do some stuff that way. Right, so I think we're going to see a Seasoned Dungeoneer this turn. I think that's a little bit late in terms of being good enough for, because they don't get to put counters on it next turn because we're going to have the initiative because we're attacking for 8. And then we can kill them on the backswing on the turn after. We're a long way off of casting on the Murktide, so I'm just going to leave these cards in hand. Let our opponent think about Forcible blue card. Let's shuffle our library. We don't have any basics. This could be a Fourth Eolingus for X2. I think we still have that beat. Eowyn. If you haven't seen this card, it's a card for sure. It does some work. So this is 4 mana, 3/4 haste. Enters the battlefield. Exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power. Legendary creatures you control gain protection of that creature's colour until end of turn. So we're going to lose our guy here. And we're going to lose the initiative. And they're going to swing for 6 or 7 and forge up. And then the turn after, they will kill us. So I think our opponent's got us here, you know. This is also a permanent exile. We don't ever get this back. Fable and Mirror Break. That's not really relevant at this point. Okay. How do we get out of this little pickle? So our opponent might be on a slightly more human-oriented build, but they might just be running Eowyn because it's a decent card. And it's human anyway, so their caverns are going to get it. Well, we've seen the Solitude rather than the other one. Oh, where were you last turn, Daze? So this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the 5. Yeah. I think we are dunzos. Okay, yeah, Eowyn absolutely slaughtered us there, which is nice to actually be able to showcase that, even if it did give us a pretty miserable time. Alright, so Hydroblast is good. I don't really want Price of Progress here. Molten Collapse is a good answer to things like Chalices as well as killing a creature, so I'm definitely in the market for these. Daze on the play is okay. Orcish Bowmasters, this isn't really a good matchup for it, but it does make 2 bodies, but I think we're just going to be trying to make a 1-drop threat here and then riding that to victory. So I think we're looking at something along these lines. Hydroblast counters a fair few of their things. Meltdown is an option, but I think Molten Collapse does the same thing as Meltdown here. I think I'd rather have the Molten Collapse for the most part. Sure, we're going to ride in like this. We don't have an answer for our opponent's turn 1 thing unless we try and ponder for it. We can't enable our Molten Collapse in a big way, but we do have a turn 1 threat. I think I'm going to keep this one. We could definitely come unstuck here, though. If our opponent watches the channel, then they're obviously a refined and quality player, so they're probably going to have a hand that's going to toast us here. But we have an answer to a Chalice. We haven't answered their first creature, so if they introduce initiative, we can then kill their guy, get the initiative, and then kind of be ahead. That's what I'm hoping to do. Another Lotus Petal, so probably going to see a 4-drop this turn. No, maybe just a 3-drop. A Chalice for 1. Okay, that's fine. So these Ponders not looking great. We can use them to surveil if that's what we think is necessary. Interesting. We could Molten Collapse this Chalice. Is that necessary? We could Molten Collapse the Lotus Petal. I think we're just going to attack for 1, weirdly. Now, if we find a fetch land, we can deal with the creature as well. Maybe this is extra conservative, more so than we need to be. We could have just been firing off a ponder to find that fetch land. By surveilling, not by actually pondering, because the Chalice exists. Chalice for 1. Okay. Dragon's Rage Channeler. I think we are going to cast this into the thing. We just want to get ourselves the surveil trigger here. A Wasteland. That works with Molten Collapse. I'll put that on top of our library. Yeah, Aowen in the previous game was real nice. Flametongue Carver has come a long way over the years, and that's a pretty nice evolution of it. So we want them to play a creature, ideally one that's not like that scary, but just something that we can snipe off and take out a Chalice and a land. Our Ancient Tomb. So they can deploy pretty much anything from their deck at this point. Solitude would be annoying, but alright. Seasoned Dungeoneer. This is acceptable. There's a Plains, sure. So, okay, we've got Solitude being evoked right now. That is very good here, because that stops us from taking the initiative. Yep. So our opponent's got 1 card in hand, and it's the Plains. So we begin with a Wasteland. If we take this, they can't make a 4-drop guy. So I think that's the play here. So we destroy this creature and this Chalice. Black, red. Now they get to go into the Lost Well and scry too. So our opponent is definitely ahead here. The second Chalice is somewhat annoying, but we can maybe blow that up and deploy a Channeler if they don't do anything this turn. I guess the ideal draw for us is a fetch land. If they play like a creature using their Lotus Petal up, then we play a fetch land, crack it, Molten Collapse the creature and the Chalice, and we get to play our guy. They put 1 on the top, 1 on the bottom, so I imagine they've probably got a castable spell here. There's that Plains we knew about. What flavour of scary creature is this? Okay, yeah. So this is going to go into stash. Okay, fetch land is going to be the whole game here, almost. Fetch land? Not a fetch land. So what we do here is a permanent card. So Descended is a permanent card put into a graveyard from anywhere. That's the key text here. So they get a Spooky Skeleton next turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can cast the Channeler to get us Descended. To blow this and this. But how are we getting the Murktide into play, which is kind of a key thing for us? If we've still got a lot of life to work with, so maybe we can kind of just grind through some stuff, I guess. So this is the permanent card that's going to go to our graveyard because of the Chalice. A fetch land would have made this incredible, but alas, that's not where we're at here. Black, red. So now we can play a Murktide and a Ponder. Although we can't cast the Ponder if we don't have another blue source ready to go. They will be going to Throne of the Dead 3, which is... Maybe we shouldn't play a guy out because of Solitude. Right, I just drew another Seasoned Dungeoneer. That's pretty good for them. That puts them straight into Throne of the Dead 3. So I guess we don't have to worry about their thing coming off. Okay, so this is... They went for that over the Magus. That's interesting. I think they probably win either way. But, yeah. I think the real part where this game was won was having the Solitude early on. I think that's the thing that's like absolutely rocked our world here. So we could ponder looking for a land to make our guy bigger. Do we need our guy to be bigger? Is the next question. So this is 1, 2, 3, potentially 4. But we will need to find a blue source if we did that. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our guy will be 7. We can't block any of these guys. So this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we'd have to try and Murktide our way. I don't think we have any outs here. But I'm going to keep looking. Brazen Borrower can get rid of the spooky skeleton. If that's the thing we want to do. This Stalactite Stalker is not really good enough. So if we get rid of this, we take 9. And then the following turn, we take 11. So the Scalding Tarn will kill us. If we play the Murktide, we need a Molten Collapse or something. Okay. I think we are just dead here, is the truth of the matter. So we crack this for a blue source. I think it's probably another Volk here. Cast this. Blue. Blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we play this out. We look at the top card of their library, because if we draw a lightning bolt, that can be... Okay, Touch the Spirit Realm is not going to go well for us here. I think our opponent's just got us bang to rights. Okay, Stalactite Stalker is not a lightning bolt. We are dead here. I think we can call this one a day. We've seen the top card of our opponent's library. It gets rid of the only thing that we have that can do any sort of contesting. Not that we can contest any of these guys. But next time we can play Stalactite Stalker, kill this, but then die to these, so we're just done. Yeah, our opponent got us there. There was some good games, though. I think our opening hand was a bit awkward, but again, the Solitude was a problem for us early on. And then that turn where if we'd have drawn a fetch land and we could have deployed the Dragon's Rage Channeler, so we'd at least have something to contest the initiative with, that would have been good too. We're just kind of on the wrong side of some margins there. But I would happily play Delver decks into the initiative often. And Stalactite Stalker being an evasive threat is very nice too. Alright, we are 2-1. Let's go to round 4. No opening lands in our hand. No lands in our opening hand even. Let's mulligan. This is Delver, isn't it? This is a Delvery hand if ever I saw one. What are we putting back here? Do we think double Daze is going to be good? I think we can probably get rid of the Brainstorm because we're going to be filtering our draws via these Dazes anyway. And we're on the play, so we can go pretty hard here. So this is going to be a Volcanic into Dragon's Rage Channeler, the classic start. So yeah, we're going to probably be surveilling and fixing our draws anyway, so we're not going to have bad cards to put back with Brainstorm necessarily. And Ponder is just generally more useful in that sort of circumstance. I don't think we're dazing a Ponder just yet. There definitely was where I'd think about dazing a Ponder. But we're not there yet. Alright. Back over to us. A Bauble. I think we want to cast this Ponder first. Dragon's Rage Channeler, that can go into the graveyard. That's the creature. Sorcery, the land. This is the artifact. So we will have Delirium. Sure, we'll put the Bauble down. And then the Bowmasters. And the Wasteland. Let's play this. Take this out. Let's play this. I think we want to keep the Bowmasters against... I think our opponent is on like some sort of Doomsday, or basically they're playing Ponders, right? So leave this on top. Maybe we should have stacked in a way that the Bauble's got to do some more stuff here. Let's see what our opponent's got. A DRC. Okay, so we're on some kind of mirror-ish match. So our opponent can play a DRC, and then we can play a Bowmasters, ping down their DRC, and protect it with Dazes. So we draw the Bowmasters here. We have the Bauble next turn. I think it's better to try and Bowmasters this, although... Okay, now they're just going to be able to get this Delirious if they have an instant. Play this out. So let's look at the top card of our opponent's library. We also look at the top card of our library. Stalactite Stalker. Let's just fuel some stuff here. I want to see the top card of their library. just try and work out instance here. Like a Daze protects this Dragon's Rage Channeler quite effectively. Underground Sea. I think we're going to attack first. There is a Daze. It's going to give them Delirium once this resolves. I think it's more important to protect our red sources in this matchup. And Orcish Bowmasters. If we're getting Wasteland next turn, we don't really want that, so let's put that away. If they had another way of fighting, I'm pretty happy to spend other days just to protect our lands, potentially. But we shut off cantrips. Another Bowmasters. I did put that one in the bin, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I did. A Lightning Bolt. Targeting our Dragon's Rage Channel. I'll let them surveil. Let's say no to this one. Underground Sea, that can go into the graveyard. We've got lands in hand. This game's become very weird. They've got a Daze too. Alright. Right, we're going to lose our channeler here. So our opponent is ahead, but their life total has already taken a little bit of a peppering. So our opponent can Wasteland us. So we're going to play out this Scalding Tarn. Bash for 2. Next turn we can play the Orcish Bowmasters. Do I want to save Bowmasters to kill a 1-1? Or is pushing this extra 1 damage going to make a difference? So this will be putting them to 9, and then they'll be taking 3. So I think this is the thing we need to do now. So, can we get a second Underground Sea here? Or do we get the Badlands? We can't be wasted off of stuff. Yeah, I think the Badlands is good here, actually. It does play into Daze. We've already seen 3 Dazes from our opponent. Right, so we ping them for 1 here. This grows our Orc army, so we get additional damage in now. So our opponent's going to be on 6. So what we're not wanting to see here is a Murktide Regent. What we're about to see here is a Murktide Regent. I feel it in my bones. Here we go. So this is going to be the full-size one as well. So Molten Collapse, please. Or Borrower would also be fine here. We found neither. Are we Wastelanding to make it less likely they have another Murktide? They wouldn't have exiled the cards the way they have if they had another Murktide. If we attack with everything, they take 1. So that's not really good enough. Unless we're banking on drawing Lightning Bolt exactly next turn. But if we attack with everything... You know, that was an interesting call. If we attack with everything, then we could lose all of our Bowmasters. Yeah, I think our opponent's got us here. I'm pretty sure we're about to get lightning bolted. I feel it in my bones. We don't know the differences between our list and theirs. There's the Wasteland we saw like a million years ago. That's not a problem. Murktide comes in for 8 here. So we draw lightning bolt now and it's lethal. They have a lightning bolt though. Sure. Alright. Yeah, we got out DELVER. Maybe we're aggressively firing some Dazes back there. Alright, we would like some Pyroblasts and some Molten Collapses, some Hydroblasts, and we do not require Force of Wills in this matchup, so they can get out. The Dazes are kind of nice still. I like Narset as well. I like to go slightly bigger than our opponent. And that's probably all we want. This is 3 cuts to fit this in. I don't think we need Borrower because of the fact that we're playing Molten Collapses. This can bounce some tokens and things, but I think this is fine as is. And then cutting 2 things becomes a difficult one to assess here. I don't think we want to cut any threats. I don't think we want to cut any removal. Which means the only thing we can cut is cantrips. So, like, Bauble and Ponder. Maybe 1 of each. As weird as that sounds. Because we kind of want Delirium for our Channeler. Maybe Ponder is worse for us because we're bringing other sorceries. Sure. And the information we can get off the ball was kind of nice. Alright. We don't have a turn 1 threat. We do have some lightning bolts. So we can lightning bolt, do some other bits and pieces. Work towards a Murktide. Sure. I think this is a weird hand that is just on the acceptable side of things. So I think we start off with a Bloodstained Mire. So we have the option to flex into a lightning bolt, but we can just keep ourselves safe from opposing Wastelands, and then we can leverage our own Wasteland more effectively. A Delver of Secrets, sure. There is a Bauble. There is a Ponder. So we want a red source. It's probably a Volk here. and we'll worry about black mana later? Or do we go and get another Badlands here? That cuts us off of Daze, so they can just not play around Daze. Interesting. We definitely want blue sources. I think we do have to get a Volk here. So if we Wasteland them off this first, and they can't Daze our Lightning Bolt here. Right, they're looking at the top card of our library there. So our hand is kind of playing more towards control. Deal with what they put into play, and then we stick a big guy. Alright, that's very much in keeping with the theme. Let's ponder here. I don't really like the Stalker, because we don't have the sources for it to do anything. So I do like the Wasteland, though. I think we're going to go any order and shuffle. Molten Collapse. Will be nice if we get a black source. Yeah, leading out on that Bloodstained Mire is coming back to bite us a little bit now. But I think it's better than leading out on something that just gets Wastelanded. Pyroblast. Yep, our hand is fine. Now we can answer a whole bunch of things. We have 2 answers to Murktide, which is kind of like the big leveler a lot of the time. If our opponent keeps drawing Wastelands, though, we are going to be in trouble. Scalding Tarn. I don't really want to play out a little Murktide into this board. Our opponent's got loads of cards in hand. I think we are better off playing the control route. Just going to stare at each other for a bit. Alright, this is a fine thing to be doing with our time. Just play the Channeler out. I imagine we're getting Lightning Bolted here. Or Orcish Bowmasters. So we've got some options here. We could try and deal with the Bowmasters by surveilling. But I don't think that's where I want to be here. Although if we're going to Lightning Bolt the Bowmasters anyway, which we almost certainly are, but that means we're not getting the source of mana we want. I think we just have to let this go. Because we want a black source from this, but we also want a blue source for this Murktide. I don't think this is a Pyroblast target, but it's close. I think the Pyroblast is there for the Murktides. Our opponent's got a lot of cards in hand, so this Brainstorm can do an awful lot of work to fix it. Many pieces to move around. Right, so I'm going to jab us for 2. Playing a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Is this something I want to Lightning Bolt at end of turn? The cost of that is quite high for us, so I don't think we do that. Right, so now I think we can Lightning Bolt here. Right, so we've got Pyroblast, Daze. We can do some Molten Collapse stuff in a bit. We can take a little bit more damage from the Bowmasters. That's not the end of the world. A Ponder. I think that's acceptable. Our opponent is casting more cantrips than us, though, which is normally a good way of working out who's winning. Cracking the Delta. It's going to be a Murktide, I believe. Now we have 2 bites of the cherry trying to kill this if we want to. By Pyroblasting end of turn, but that plays into Daze. So I think our plan here is to untap and then Pyroblast. Alright, let's play our land out, I think. This is Pyroblast targeting Murktide Regent. Say no to Murktide Regent. Right, we're seeing a Polluted Delta being cracked here. We can always Molten Collapse this in a second. And then our Daze protects the Molten Collapse. So this probably gets us... I don't want to get wasted off of blue. I don't really want to get wasted off of black. I definitely don't want to get wasted off of red. So I guess it is another Volcanic here. So black and red. We can defend this with our Daze if we have to. Okay, we didn't have to do that. Okay, so we can then play a Murktide next turn. And they can't waste us off of being able to do that. A Ponder, that's fine. This Daze is now kind of rotting in our hand a little bit. It's unlikely we get any use out of this, but it could get turned into something else via a Brainstorm. But maybe if our opponent plays multiple spells in a turn, we can catch the last thing out. Like last turn, they tapped out to the point where our Daze would have been useful to protect ourselves. It chose not to shuffle. Right, we're taking 2. Problem is we're taking just little chip shots this whole time, which is a little bit awkward. We've got a Bauble here. This is an awkward one because of the Bowmasters, but I think we are looking at just playing our little friend here. So, instant, sorcery. Better to take instants than it is sorceries here. If we just want to make the biggest one we can here. No, I think we make a Murktide that keeps us delirious, perhaps. So we get rid of 2 instants, 1 sorcery, and some lands. And then we can make another one to grow this one if we need to. Sure, we're not firing off this Bauble yet. This should blunt our opponent's attacks. I imagine this is probably just going to get Pyroblasted pretty soon. There it is. Sure. I'm going to take another chip shot from these guys. Do I want to Lightning Bolt this now to give us more option to play Murktide next turn? It does play into a Daze. A Bauble. Alright, I think I'm okay to bolt this guy now. Okay. Let's see what our next draw is. Am I playing this Murktide Regent into a Daze? I don't think I am. If our opponent jams a Bowmasters or two here, I'm going to feel pretty bad. But they would have done it end of turn with the empty mana they had. Alright, so now we're sort of back in fighting shape. There's that Brainstorm we knew about. So this Daze could end up just being a Surveil trigger at some stage, rather than being a useful spell. Our opponent's got Wasteland there, we're going to lose our black source. It's not what we're about right now. Take one. Okay, we're going to see another Bowmasters here. We can't really do anything about this. Now, we could use the Wasteland to make our Daze more likely to achieve something. I think our opponent is just whittling us down quite nicely over there. Opponent's still got so many cards over there. Let's play this Dragon's Rage Channeler. I think we will take out our opponent's open red source there. So we have a 3/3 to block with this turn. We might be able to leverage this Daze by using that Wasteland. Not convinced, but it's possible. A Lightning Bolt on our guy. That's not going to do anything for us there, is it? Yeah, this Daze has been pretty awkward. Scalding Tarn. That's not really the one, is it? Okay, so here goes Murktide Regent. So, Ponder, Pyroblast, Lightning Bolt, and then some excess land. That's fine. It's big enough to dodge red removal and block their Orc Army token. But Lightning Bolt kills us. Molten Collapse. This puts us to 1. How do we get back from being on 1? That is a pickle, isn't it? Orcish Bowmasters? No. No, we got nothing there. I think our opponent played that game really well. Yeah, this is an awkward match sometimes because you can't... If you mulligan a bit in your opening hand, you end up behind on resources because it is like a total resource game. And we kind of got a little bit messed up with our mana because we played around Wasteland by playing our Bloodstained Mire, but then that had to fetch us a red source. And we had to make sure we had blue-blue, which then kept us away from black sources for a while. So there's definitely a lot of micro decisions that we could definitely analyse and probably play a little bit differently. But GG to our opponent, they played really well. And yeah, no shame losing to the mirror. Let's go to the final round. I think we're now hunting for the 3-2. Nothing to go with our Force of Will, and 2 black cards we can't cast. On the draw, is this acceptable? I don't think it is. Like, I do like having the Wasteland, the Bolt, and this, but kind of like, this is what we're keeping here, and we're relying on other stuff. But we are drawing... We do get to work out what we're supposed to do with these. Oh, dear. This is a real tricky one. I think this is kind of very 50-50 whether or not we keep this one. I think keeping this on the draw is better than keeping it on the play. As weird as that is. So I am going to keep this one. Right, all of our lands, all of our fetch lands get all of our colours. So any of our 9 fetches will give us Bowmasters mana. We're looking at here a Ponder from our opponent. Are we looking at a combo-y Ponder deck? Are we looking at a tempo-y Ponder deck? Is it Bug Beans? There's a lot of options for what this could be. I would love to draw a land this turn. We did not draw a land. We did draw a blue card though. I will deploy a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Worst case scenario, we can use our Force of Will Ponder to... Oh, they're dazing. How much do I want this guy in play? Do I want him in play so much that I'm going to pitch 2 cards to something that they can then Lightning Bolts? I don't think so. So we're looking at another tempo deck here. We don't want to get Wastelanded. Phew, no Wasteland. Alright, we will Wasteland them. Island cycling. Okay, so we're on a slightly different sort of build to the last one. Underground Sea, sure. So now it's our time to ponder. We're looking for more mana sources. We have found more mana sources. I think I will bury the Volk, then put the Mire on top, and then the Ponder. So we at least have Forcible Blue card, then we can untap into Bowmasters protected with Forcible Blue card. I think our opponent's more on the Scam style deck. They could be like a Doomsday deck and just really value their life total. That's also a possibility. If our opponent wants to fight over our Bowmasters, we kind of want them to do it on their turn. Tropical Island. Okay, so I'm feeling maybe more towards Bug Beans, but we'll see. We will be deploying the Bowmasters here. I think our opponent is likely to fire off a Brainstorm here. Yep, there it is. If we cast this in their upkeep, they don't get to do that, but then we expose our Orcish Bowmasters to something like a Witherbloom command more easily. I think we probably were best off upkeeping that one. Underground Sea. Not unhappy to see this one. Right, I'm going to cast a Ponder here. We're probably not supposed to play our land there in case we draw the Wasteland. Like, just more Bowmasters. I don't really want these other cards as the problem, so I think we do have to shuffle this one. Stalker. It's not that exciting, is it? Right, let's just fire this bad boy in. This gives us an extra point of damage. We're just trying to pressure right now. Because we've got 6 points of burn in hand as well. So our opponent's on an effective 8 already. Not that they know it. This Force of Will kind of rotting away in our hand right now. I think it is right to ponder there. Basic Island. There's going to be a Murktide. Don't really get to do much about. 1, 2, 3, 4 cards in the graveyards. There's going to be a 7/7, so we can't lightning bolt it, is what you're telling me. Understood. Right, let's play a Stalker. Let's play a Bauble. See what our opponent's drawing next turn. A Bowmasters of their very own. Okay. We're not attacking and just slamming our guys into a big 7/7 body. Alright. Our plan is very clear. It involves lightning bolting our opponent a lot. They also know that we know they have a Bowmasters. But we need to just make the most of the red mana we have available every turn, so we are just going to be casting a lightning bolt every turn. And they're going to Bowmasters now and kill our Bowmasters. It's fine. Our opponent's on 10. A red source would be okay. A blue card might be okay here. Another Stalker. Right. We're going to slam him with the team. Are we slamming him with the Bowmasters here? They have to double block either of these. And then they attack for 7. And then we have to try and kill them on the next turn. But we get to put them to 4. They attack with this. If they block this, they can then chump this and only take 2. I don't think we want to lose our Bowmasters. So this is the double block and the trade here. We got another Bowmasters. That's pretty backbreaking. No, they don't have another. Okay. We lost a creature, so our Stalactite Stalker is going to be bigger. We have 6 points of burn in hand. We have 2 lethal threats if both of our lightning bolts resolve. Fatal Push on our Stalactite Stalker. Okay. That's pretty good. It depends what we can get done with these creatures in play. Like, we have lethal if everything goes to plan. But our opponent's got 4 cards in hand, so they're going to have something to say about this. Polluted Delta. Let's lightning bolt their face. You can also draw Molten Collapse here and try and get rid of the Murktide. So our opponent's now doing the maths about what if we have another lightning bolt. Right. Force of Will. 3, 4, 5, 6. So they can't crack this fetch. Scalding Tarn. That doesn't help us here. When our opponents crack this fetch, they're very unlikely to do so. Just play this out and pass. I'm pretty sure they're just going to turn their guy sideways here. Well, that is all she wrote, unfortunately. So our opponent's deck is like a little bit bigger and a little bit more control than ours, which is a problem. I believe they are on a Bug Beans deck, which means Narset is going to be good here. The Price of Progress, we are going to be the aggro here. They do have basics, but again, we are probably going to be the aggro here. Molten Collapse can kill their guys, but the Pyroblast are just going to be better at doing that and also forcing our own things through. They do have Wasteland lock, but I just don't think we get to play around that. Don't mind the Borrower because it attacks. We don't need the Molten Collapse, I don't think, if we're boarding in Pyroblasts. Although Molten Collapse blows up carpet, actually. So maybe we board weirdly. Would I rather have 1 force instead of Dazes? Maybe. Yeah, not really happy with how this looks. We're basically just going to be playing the aggro deck and trying to go in underneath them. Is Molten Collapse going to be better than Force of Wills? How realistically are we going to be able to... we do need to deal with Carpet, because if they just get to accelerate out with Carpet, that will just beat us on the spot, because they'll be playing several turns ahead mana-wise, and then we can't win. So I think we need... Do we need to... Is Daze going to be better? If we're on the play, our opponent, we're probably going to be forcing our opponent's hand a little bit more with a Daze than we are with a Force. I like Borrower because it's a threat. Sure, we're going to try this. I would much rather be in our opponent's seat for this one. We don't even have the full set of Wastelands to try and punish their mana base. Okay, like, our guy's going to get big. Our opponent's mulligan to 5 cards. Okay, this is probably Underground Sea that we're fetching here. I'm not going to play out these baubles because we need them for increased damage. Maybe that's wrong, but we'll find out. Our Bowmasters is kind of nice here. Let's play this out. That's what our opponent's working with over there. With a Bloom Command. Okay, that can't kill our Stalker, which is nice. So we keep the other bauble in hand. Obviously, we draw some guys down the line that we want to do stuff with. We can. So like the Dragon's Rage Channeler, we can use it as a Surveil trigger. Nice, they got blue there. Lorien revealed. We know they've got a Witherbloom command, but we know they can't cast it. So we draw a card first. I think I will deploy this guy now. If they want to Daze it or fight around it, then it's kind of going to jam them up a little bit. It'll either take them back turns-wise in terms of the land they have. Alright, there's an Underground Sea. There's their Bowmasters into our Bowmasters. Sure. That was always a possibility, but we knew about the Witherbloom command that they couldn't cast off of the island there. Lightning Bolt was interesting to me. Just take out our opponent's mana development. Attacks here. We are the beatdown. We don't have a land here, which is a problem. But if they can't answer our Stalker, then we'll be in good shape. Right, so playing around Daze before they do their... Oh no, we're just going to see it up the beanstalk, sure. So we're just going to keep growing this every turn and hopefully jab our opponent for enough damage. Orcish Bowmasters, that's not really the one we wanted right now. This is not free to do. They will get a guy that can attack. But I kind of want the card. Actually, no, the guy won't be able to attack, actually. That's fine. Get it in their turn because the draw's next turn. We need to make sure that we are getting our guy bigger every turn. The little goblin rogue that could. Because this is going to outclass Murktides right now. Yep, so they're going to be able to ping us for 1 and make a guy, which means they can block around some menace shenanigans. But we found our red source, so we can start doing red spells soon. We have lethal right now, in fact, because we can attack for... Well, actually, no, we can attack for 5. But if they have a fetch land, we have lethal. There's a Wasteland, so we're going to lose this Underground Sea. That is not what we wanted, but it's acceptable. I think they are on chump block duty over there. Nope, okay. Thinking about it. Pretty brave attack, that one. Kind of signals some stuff. Let's bash. Let's crack this. Get ourselves a Volcanic. Are we Wastelanding? Are we Lightning Bolting? We do have to hit 1 more time regardless. I think the play here is play the Channeler and then play the Bauble. There is a Daze. Alright, so I think we play this one out now. Our guy's getting bigger. They can't answer this guy now, they will lose. Most likely, anyway. Suppose they can double block. Brainstorm, sure. Yeah, our opponent's deck is just a little bit bigger than ours. They've got more controlling resources, and they do have a more stable mana base because they have some basics and just more lands in total that they can reach for. So they're not desperately trying to cast like a red spell, a black spell, and a blue spell on turn 1. A Ponder. Okay, so this feels like they're in chump blocking duty here, which means we could try and win the game with a Lightning Bolt on our turn, or we could just take the chump block. I would like to find a land, so we will give them a ping here. A Wasteland. Yuck. That's not where I want to be. But a land lets us play around Daze. There's an Orcish Bowmasters. Yep. Some decisions here. So we play this out, and we play Bowmasters. This gets dazed, we lose the game. Well, not necessarily lose the game, but we're in trouble. If we Lightning Bolt this, it can't be dazed. but can be Force of Willed. This is a tough one. But if we get rid of this, then we can Brainstorm next turn. If we Lightning Bolt now, we do just flat out win the game. So we can Lightning Bolt playing around Daze, but we can hold the Lightning Bolt, and if our opponent does any sort of fetch land cracking, that's pretty good. They basically can't do up the Beanstalk if this is in play. Right, we're going to go for the Bowmasters. They've got a Daze, it's good here. They don't have the Daze, sure. Alright. That was a tricky one, but you can certainly see how we have to be the aggro here, right? So maybe that means we don't want this Narset, and we just want more things to protect ourselves, but we're going to have to play a slower game because we're on the draw anyway. Our opponent kind of just gets to do their thing. I think we just go back in as is. Although the Daze probably becomes... Is it Force or Force of Negation? What are we most worried? I guess we are kind of worried about Murktide. So I guess if we're going to have one Force, it should probably be the Negation. Alright. I'm not ecstatic with how this goes. Like, we could also bring in this Surgical to deal with the Wasteland lock. This is turn 1 Stalactite Stalker, and then we get to cast some other spells. That seems fine. We have a lot of lands, so if they are going down the Wasteland route, we get a little bit of leeway there. We will lose our only black source, but we have other mana sources. So we ideally want to see a cantrip here rather than holding open removal. Sure. So there's the Ponder. So we hold open removal, they just negate our turn 1 drop. This will be a guy that doesn't die to Orcish Bowmasters, which is quite nice. Another Stalker, interesting. Well, they didn't like it last time, so let's see if they like it this time. I think it is just Underground Sea. Let's play our friend. Alright, we're on board. We've got a guy that is bigger than Bowmasters. They can obviously play Bowmasters and double block it. There is a black source for Bowmasters. I think we're going to see a fatal push here. A Murktide Regent. So we can Bowmaster. We can Brainstorm in peace right now. So I think we're going to... the only problem with that is this is our only black source. But we want to find a fetch land to maximize this Brainstorm. So we are going to do this. Right, we did not find a fetch land. We did find the Bauble, but we can't do anything with the Bauble. Murktide, you are not for now. And Ponder, I guess we can save for next time around. Or is it just the price? Neither of them are particularly useful here. So we're in this awkward spot here where we can Wasteland their mana, but that kind of runs counter to the price of progress. But the price of progress is a thing for later. If we can reduce our opponent's ability to just play the game, that's probably not a bad place to be. Sure, so we're going to lose our only black source. That is annoying, but we have other ways of doing this. Maybe we should have buried the price under the Murktide. Maybe that was just an error. So we can Ponder now without fear of Bowmasters, so we're going to do that. We're probably shuffling this. Another black source is good. The Murktide could be useful. Okay, I'm down with this one. We're take this. We've already played a land for the turn, so it's going to pass. Next turn we can make Stalactite Stalker and grow it using our fetch land, unless we want the Lightning Bolt. We need the black source actually, don't we? Yeah, so this is fine. Right, let's go and get an Underground Sea again. Play our little friend. This does run into Bowmasters as an issue here. If our opponent has the Bowmasters, then I think they are doing well. Okay, they didn't have the Bowmasters. So we're going to see like, yeah, Lorien Revealed. That's what I was about to say. Back over to them. An Underground Sea. And nothing else. Right, they didn't have a Bowmasters last turn. I think playing out the Bauble here is where I want to be. Let's have a look. Carpet of Flowers. It's a pretty good one. If they had a Bowmasters, they would have just killed this when it was a 1-1. They could have drawn it just for this turn, though. Sheoldred's Edict. 1, 2... It's not actually that big of a guy. I'm going to play this Narset and see how they feel about this one. They've got a Daze. Yuck. Right, yeah, so our opponent's like a control deck that also has Daze, which is certainly not the best for us. Alright, we need our opponent to play like 10 basic non-basic lands. That's our strategy. That Narset going away is not the best. There's a carpet we knew about. Yep, so they're just going to accelerate all their mana in a big way here. So they're going to go to second main, and they're going to have 5 mana to play with. No, they didn't do anything interesting. An underground sea. How big will our Murktide be? Not very is the answer. I will play out this land. Blue, blue, and play this guy. So let's get rid of a Brainstorm and a Ponder. We've got quite a few lands in there, so we just get rid of those. We need a threat, and here one is. We've already seen one Shouldered Edict. They usually run 2 and 2 Borrowers, I believe, on the Bug Beans. Obviously, people have their own slightly different takes on it. That's like the stock build. Okay, a lot of black mana, so probably going to see a thing that kills our guy here. Murderous Cut. Yep, that does it. A Wasteland. So we're kind of at odds with what we're trying to do here. If we play the Wasteland out, our opponent might consider Force of Will as a thing they need to play around. Like, there's no point Wastelanding when they got a Carpet of Flowers. And our opponent's probably going to recognize that. So they're going to think that we have the thing here. Alright, a lot of black mana. Up the beanstalk, sure. So our opponent should be able to win this game pretty handily from this spot. Another Price of Progress. Well, we can kill ourselves pretty handily. A basic land. What is that in aid of? Very rude. 4 red mana. We're just clicking through their turn. A Molten Collapse. I think we're going to use this to make the game last longer. So they play a threat, we kill their threat. And hopefully they'll pan enough lands into play that we might be able to kill them with the Price of Progress. I don't believe we've shown them price, so they're not expecting it, hopefully. Orcish Bowmasters. That is a real deal. It's not going to resolve. Or if it does resolve, it's not going to live. But we're going to go and try and cast on our opponent's turn. They're not really doing anything right now. A Ponder. I think it's worth trying to force the issue and get some damage going. So black and colourless for this. Alright, we get a ping. That's something. They're going to kill our guy with a Fatal Push. Or are we going to get a second ping? Looks like we're getting a second ping. Nice. This is what our plan is. Reduce our opponent's life total as low as possible. Try and cheese them. We're going to have to waste out our own land at some point maybe as well. Witherbloom Command. So they gain 2 life. That's annoying. Let's go attacks. Like, if we can just get some chip damage in, I'm happy with that. We've currently got 4 damage on board with our Price of Progress. We can't fire both of them without killing ourselves, really. Like, we can wasteland ourselves off, so we're just taking 2, 4, 6. So we can do 12 to ourselves. And then maybe 6 to our opponent if they crack this for non-basic. Mystic Sanctuary. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're putting a Lorien Revealed on top of their library. Okay, that's a pretty good Pyroblast target. A Brainstorm, you say? Okay. Or are we using our Price of Progress to just force through the damage here? Like, we have lethal amounts of damage. Lorien Revealed. Let's cast a Lightning Bolt targeting our opponent and see what that does. So now just take it. Let's try and counter target spell if it's blue. Alright, so just going to get 1 card from this. So we have options to try and just end the game. But we're going to get as much damage out of this little Orc army as we can and try and win in response to something that we can't beat. What is this? An Orcish Bowmasters, you say. So they're going to ping our guy and block our guy. I would like to destroy this creature. Our opponent's got 3 cards in hand. We're going to have to go for some sort of Price of Progress line pretty soon. They've got Force of Will mana up. But we kind of need to wasteland ourselves rather than them. So a bit of a pickle we find ourselves in. Another Wasteland. Does that change anything here? I don't believe it does. 2, 4, 6. 12 damage to us, 12 damage to them. Alright, I guess we're going to continue on with this merry dance. Like, if our opponent's not pressuring our life total, then we're not going to play into a Force of Will. And if we wasteland them off of Force of Will, then our Price of Progress isn't going to do enough damage. Right. There comes a stage where our Price of Progress might do enough to... 1 Price of Progress might be enough to kill them. It's currently doing 8 damage. An Orcish Bowmasters, this is a good pickup. I will deploy this. We'll try and do it in response to something or at their end step. Because they're going to find a cantrip, they're just going to use it, because neither of us are doing anything right now. So that extra little bit of ping might be useful. There's a fetch land. We will still fire this off at end of turn. If we get the opportunity to. Alright. Their Bowmasters, sure. 3 cards in our opponent's hand. They do still have Force of Will mana up. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If they crack this and don't find, it's only 2, 4, 6, 8. So not quite lethal yet. A Brainstorm. We're not casting that one. Alright. We're going to sit and stare for a little bit and hopefully get some lethal price of progress. So if they fetch with this Polluted Delta and get a non-basic, then each price of progress is lethal on its own. But they don't really have to fetch until they do Brainstorm stuff. What a weird game. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. I will play this card. This can attack. A single attack from this is very, very good for where we're at. Right, they've added a load of black mana, which means we're looking at something like a Murderous Cut just to kill our guy. Shoulder's Edict. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature. Well, we only have one of those. So there it goes. Our opponent doesn't want to attack in here. Bloodstained Mire. That's not the one. Not adding mana. So I think we just got another turn of staring at one another. They're coming in for 1. That's acceptable. I kind of suggest they might have another Bowmaster. 4 black mana. A Force of Will. That is a handy one. I'll play this Wasteland so we can Wasteland 2 of our lands if we need to. 2, 4, 6, 8. Getting in 1 damage here is actually a big deal. Fatal Push. Sure. Just want our opponent to play 1 more land. Just crack your Polluted Delta for a non-basic, please. A Ponder. That's not really the one, is it? So we leave this so we only take 4 damage off of each one. Are we playing out a land? I think we probably are. We can always crack and fail to find. Like a Lightning Bolt, if we can resolve it, will help a little bit. There is a Brainstorm. So now they're incentivized to crack this fetch land, to shuffle away the bad cards, which is good news for us. But bad news that they are brainstorming. Alright. They have the right number of things. We're going to let them resolve their bits and pieces. Okay. 5 cards in hand. Alright, we're getting to crunch time a little bit. They shuffle off that Ponder after they had a look as well. If we find another Force of Will... Oh, we don't have another Force of Will. Fine. We can find like a Pyroblast. That's pretty good here. An Orcish Bowmasters. That is helpful. We can fire that off. That maybe starts a fight. We will discard a land. What is going on here? A lot of mana in the pool. A Pernicious Deed, you say? Okay. That's acceptable. It does not attack. Interesting. Let's cast this Orcish Bowmasters. Black. Black. Force of Will is going on the Bowmasters. That's good news for us. Up the Beanstalk is triggering here. Is this our spot? I don't think it is just yet. I think we have to wait till our next turn. I don't really want this Volcanic Island in play. We go below 8 life soon, so we kind of have to do this now. 2, 4, 6, 8. We get rid of one of our underground seas here. 2, 4, 6, 8. So we're not dead, and we can play around a Daze if we do it like this. Hydroblast. Let's cast another Price of Progress. 2 cards left, opponent. What are they? Murderous Cut, trying to draw a card here. Sure. Did they find it? They did not! Oh, jeez. That was a ridiculous game. We really, really waited for our spot there. Yeah, wow. Wowzers, trousers indeed. So we finished with a 3-2. Let's have a quick look at our record. So 2-1, 0-2, 0-2, 2-1, 2-0. So the matchups we lost, we did get stomped, but I don't necessarily think they were bad for us. Like, the initiative matchup, I think, is fine for Delver decks. But the initiative deck is a very powerful deck that sometimes will just clobber you. Maybe we should have mulled harder to try and find turn 1 interaction. But just being on the play, having a turn 1 threat and a piece of removal if they play an initiative guy felt good. And like I said, we only got jammed up because they had the Solitude, and then also because we missed a fetch land later on. So I think all in all, pretty reasonable. Let's talk about the deck. So the obvious important thing to talk about in this deck is Stalactite Stalker. This card was better in this deck than in the Death Shadow build we played it in my opinion. It felt easier to get this to grow. Like, we had multiple options to make it grow more readily. I think part of that is because the Death Shadow deck incentivizes you to crack your fetch lands a little bit more abruptly than you do for this deck in some ways, because you need to lower your life total, you're working towards multiple things. Because you've got lands that deal 2 damage to you in your deck, you're kind of trying to pace out when you're doing those things. And also some of your things like the Street Wraith. If you've got Street Wraith Reanimate, you're probably doing that on turn 1 anyway, because that feeds into your Death Shadow plan. Whereas here, you have Channeler Bauble, then you do that. But if you don't have the Channeler, then you don't necessarily need to pop your Bauble straight away if you've got other plays that are worth doing and you're not like desperately needing like a removal spell or whatever because you or you know, a counter spell in a combo matchup. You have a little bit more freedom to use your cards that go to the graveyard on their own in the Baubles than you do the Street Wraiths in the Death Shadow build, in my opinion. But obviously you still have to work out when you're using your Baubles versus potential Bowmasters, which is interesting. As for everything else in the deck, you know, it's just kind of standard Delvery stuff. Molten Collapse is an interesting addition that I've found to be pretty reasonable. I don't think it's too good, but I think it is legacy power level. Sorcery speed is, you know, a bit of a letdown at times, but being a sorcery for a deck with Delirium is nice. So I think it certainly manages the trade-off quite nicely. And whenever you get 2 things with this, it feels pretty good. Like we did that twice against the initiative player. Obviously, one of those we had to throw our own Dragon's Rage Channeler into a Chalice, unfortunately, because we didn't find the fetch land. But still, you can definitely see why Molten Collapse is worth playing. But Stalactite Stalker did do some work. I do like the synergy between having a Channeler and the Stalker, just being able to flip cards off the top of your library. And often, if you've got like a Channeler and a Stalker in play, the cards you don't want to draw are going to be lands, right? So flipping the lands into your graveyard when you cast spells to fuel the Stalker and also just make the Channeler churn for your deck, get bigger, that sort of jam is pretty handy. What I will say is, obviously there's a lot of things like Ponders and Brainstorms and Dazes and Force of Wills that aren't doing much with your Stalker. But they're obviously just good spells and they are fueling your Murktide. So you've kind of got this weird sort of push and pull between the elements we're doing. Like I said at the start, where Delver kind of wants you to have instant sorceries, Channeler wants you to have a bit of everything, but obviously non-creature spells especially. And Stalker wants you to have permanence, so you end up in this weird spot. But the overlap between those is the Mishra's Bauble, which is kind of a key card in this particular deck, which I think is worth running as a 4 of, as you can see. Yeah, this deck was pretty good. I don't think this is exactly where I would be with this deck. I think I need more reps to tell you where I would want to be. Like 4 Wastelands does feel like something that I like to play in my tempo decks. I also think that the synergy between Wasteland and Stalactite Stalker is very good. So having that Wasteland is nice. But Molten Collapse is also very nice. So that's one of the things that you'd be thinking about trimming for a Wasteland. Or, you know, a Bauble, but the Bauble helps you with your turn 1 Stalker. So I don't think you can crack that for another Wasteland. So I think there's definitely a little bit more experimenting to be done here. And I know there's some good players who are out there doing that. Obviously, you know me, I'm more of a Rug Delver player. Kicking it old school rather than these newfangled Grixis players these days. Nevertheless, I had a fun time playing this. I really enjoyed that last round, and the round versus initiative I thought was really fun, even though it didn't quite work out for us, but you could certainly see the margins where slightly different things happening would have been fine. So that's that. One thing I will say though is the blue card count does feel a bit low. Now we did board a little bit lower and managed to find our forces in one game, but then there was another game where we did have a force in our hand, not able to do anything with it. And I think there is definitely some tension in a deck like this. So when I played the Death Shadow deck, it honestly felt like Delver would have been better because we weren't really getting our Stalactite Stalker bigger for many reasons that I mentioned in that video and this one. And Delver would have also been a little bit more in the way of blue cards, which I think that deck really wanted as well. So it's not free to be running Stalker as a threat, and skimping on blue cards does give you potential vulnerabilities, and it means that you can't necessarily just rifle through your cantrips. You're like, okay, I'm going to cantrip here, but that's your only blue card for Force of Will, so you don't really want to cantrip. And if you do cantrip, you're just looking for a blue card and then some other cards that might be good, and you might be forced into horrible situations, so you're probably best off just not casting it. But if you're not casting your cantrips, you're not really doing what this deck wants to do, which is power through its deck with all the cantrips and just play, your threats that rely on you casting a bunch of spells and just doing things. So there is some tension there. Is this the future of Delver? Well, there's not Delver in it, so maybe you don't even want to call it Delver, you just call it Grixis Tempo. But this deck definitely felt pretty strong. You're just doing the Delver things. There's, the threats, the 1-drop threats where you're playing Delver, where you're playing Stalker, to some extent they are interchangeable. And, they both come with their own pros and cons. We never got to do the killing their guys with the activated ability. So I played 10 rounds with this card now and I've not activated it yet. But we did get in a situation where it could have been a thing we did a couple of times, but that does feel more like flavor text. But it is a growing threat, and in this deck it definitely grows better than the other deck I played it in. So that's an important thing to note. I do have some other decks with this card down the line, so remember to like and subscribe, because then you won't miss it. I've got some interesting brews going on with this. I think we can leverage this a little bit more. But yeah, I would not be surprised to see Stalactite Stalker becoming one of the go-to threats. But again, it does expose you a little bit to things like Leyline in the Void and Doughty Voidwalker, if they can protect it, shutting this down a little bit. You don't see that much in the way of Leyline in the Void at the moment, so maybe it's not too much of a worry. But there was a while where the Delver decks were kind of shut down quite hard by Graveyard Hate, which is why the Mono Black Helm deck became a thing in the first place. It was very good against Blue-Red Delver at the time, because you could just shut off their graveyard, so they couldn't do Channelers, they couldn't do Murktide, so the only threats they had in their deck were Delver. We were basically in the same boat here, except instead of Delver, we just have a 1-1 Menace. And we do have the Bowmasters, but that's not really a good enough threat against the Mono Black deck. So maybe if this deck becomes more popular, it will open up space for the Leyline Helm decks to come back. Yeah, interesting. Legacy is quite open at the moment. You can take decks and mangle them around a bit and do some different stuff, and they still tick, but in a different way, which is nice. I like having choices that aren't necessarily strictly better, where there's like trade-offs for them, which I think is a good way to look at a format. If you've got choices that you can make that are not just strictly better, but okay, if I want to beat this spread of matchups, I kind of angle this way a little bit. If I want to beat this spread, I can angle the other way. And you can work out the numbers, but obviously the numbers in the format will change. And I think that's all healthy. And I'm rambling a lot, but Legacy is great. You should play it, and you should watch all my content as well if you can't get to playing it yourself. And if you want to try and play it, why not try out my sponsor Card Hoarder? I found them to be very, very easy to work with in terms of getting your cards and doing that. So a little extra plug for them today, because I really do appreciate the support they've given me to help me make this channel grow, and I hope you've enjoyed the fruits of that partnership. All right, I need to go to bed because I'm talking nonsense, so thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.